Hi, my name is Dr. Jessica Friedman, and I am the founder and president of MedEdits Medical Admissions. I am also the author of the MedEdits Guide to Medical School Admissions. The third edition of my book was recently published, and you can find the book on Amazon, where you will learn everything that you want to know about medical school admissions. So today we're going to talk about basic pre-med timelines, everything that you must accomplish in order to be the absolute best applicant that you can be when it's time for you to apply to medical school. And as you start thinking about this process, the first thing to understand is that it is a daunting process. There's a lot that you need to accomplish. There's a lot that you need to do. That includes coursework, scholarly activities, volunteer activities, clinical activities, as well as a host of other things that you need to accomplish in the next 4 to 5 to 6 years, depending on what your personal timeline will be. It's really important, so you can be less overwhelmed, to plan ahead, to have a general idea of what you want to accomplish when, but yet at the same time to be somewhat flexible. So to understand that there could be things that happen along the way that will kind of encourage you to deviate from that plan. So maybe you originally were thinking when you started college that you were going to apply 4 years from now, and perhaps you decide once you're actually in college, based on what happens on your course, that you may decide to apply 5 or 6 years from now instead. So it's important to really be adaptable and to modify your schedule as needed. And understand that there are ways to alleviate the stress of, kind of doing everything you need to do to be a great medical school applicant, and also to enjoy the process. And that's something that I always encourage our students to do. This isn't just about kind of jumping through hoops. And the more that you can enjoy what you're doing, the more that you can really become engaged in your coursework, in your activities, not only the happier, you won't only be a happier person, but you'll actually be a better applicant and a better interviewee when it comes time for you to sit down in an interview seat. So I find that one of the best ways to alleviate stress through this process is not to rush and, to give yourself the time that you need to really learn as much as you can and to enjoy what you're doing. So the first thing people ask when they want to apply to medical school is, well, what do I have to take? What are the courses that I need to take? And that isn't such a straightforward answer anymore. The vast majority of medical schools in the United States do require specific prerequisite courses. However, more and more medical schools are moving towards something called competency-based admissions, meaning that they may not have specific courses that you must take in order to apply to a specific medical school, but instead they kind of want you to have competencies in chemistry and biology and physics, in the humanities and the social sciences. So even though some schools may not have specific prerequisites, they still want to see a certain level of mastery of all of the things that the schools that do require prerequisites, they will basically all want to see the same things. Since the vast majority of medical schools still do have specific required prerequisite courses, we recommend to our students that they should take those prerequisite courses. So until all medical schools have moved towards competency-based admissions, we feel the safest thing for students to do is to still take the basic courses that are required by the vast majority of medical schools. The other thing that medical schools require, and this sort of isn't something that, you can study for, but it's more something that you will develop over time through your activities and just sort of through your daily interactions with people, are interpersonal and interpersonal competencies. And we'll discuss a little bit about that, but not as much as we are, going to discuss sort of the fundamentals that you really need to become a medical school applicant, quote, on paper. The interpersonal and interpersonal competencies, we hope that you will sort of nurture and develop those competencies over time. So what are the prerequisite required courses? General chemistry, 2 semesters with lab; organic chemistry, 2 semesters with lab; biology, 2 semesters with lab; and physics, 2 semesters with lab. Required by some medical schools is also math 2 semesters, English 2 semesters, psychology, sociology, and biochemistry. So these courses listed on this slide, we recommend that students try to take all of these courses, even though the ones listed on the bottom, the 5 listed on the bottom, are not necessarily required by all medical schools. Again, it's best to play this conservatively and to take all the courses that might be required by the medical schools to which you will be applying in the future. Something else to take note of is that psychology, sociology, and biochemistry are topics that are covered on the MCAT. So we recommend taking psychology, sociology, and biochemistry before you take the MCAT. There are some students who do not take specifically psychology and sociology before taking the MCAT, and instead they might just sort of prep for those topics and those disciplines through test prep materials. But we feel that it's ideal if you can take courses at an undergraduate college or at your undergraduate college in those 2 topics rather than using test prep materials. Also, highly recommended by us, by MedEdits, is to take upper level science classes. So definitely biochemistry is a must, but we also recommend, when possible, that students take upper level science classes in any scientific discipline. And this is to demonstrate your ability to succeed when faced with a very rigorous scientifically based curriculum. And also, it's sort of nice to take these upper level science classes as opposed to kind of the more foundational classes, which are often leader classes. And the upper level science classes can sometimes be more enjoyable just because students sort of aren't as competitive and aren't as kind of stressed about those classes. Also, what we consider a prerequisite, a MedEdits prerequisite, as we call it, is research. Medical schools really want to see that you have research, because as a physician, even if you aren't a scientist, even if you don't do research as part of your future career, you'll always be asking questions. You'll always be practicing evidence-based medicine. You'll always be reading the literature and critically evaluating the literature. So having a research background is absolutely a must. Clinical exposure, too, is definitely a prerequisite. There's no way that you can convince anybody that you want to be a physician if you don't understand what it means to be a doctor. What does it mean to practice medicine? And also, what does it mean to be a patient? Understanding the patient experience and what it means to live with illness or to live with disability. So clinical exposure, research, upper level science classes, absolute must for anybody applying to medical school. We also ideally like our students to have some sort of community service or volunteer work. Again, not just because we hate it when people sort of jump through hoops, but if you do meaningful community service or volunteer work, you're going to understand people from other backgrounds. You're going to understand other people's challenges, and you're going to gain exposure to people of different cultures. And so this just kind of gives you an understanding of people, and it also kind of shows that you're compassionate and humanistic. Other things that if you can do, medical schools love to see teaching experience. Is there a course that you really enjoy that you can become a TA for? Leadership experiences are also crucial for, to be the absolute best medical school, the best medical school applicant you can be, but we don't like for students to just sort of go out and get a leadership experience. Instead, we would rather that students find leadership experiences within their activities. So we like it when these leadership experiences sort of happen, organically, and that you will sort of naturally move up the ranks in any specific experience, whether that be in research and taking on more responsibility, whether that be in a peer advisory role and by your senior year, you're supervising, 20 freshmen, so whatever you are involved with that is meaningful to you, try to sort of move up the ranks, take on more responsibility, and sort of hopefully it will evolve into a leadership experience. Real life work experiences are also important for obvious reasons, working with different backgrounds, appreciating, the value of a dollar. And then if you have any other sort of interest that really kind of will help you to stand out, whether that be art or sports or martial arts or anything, we really like our students when possible to continue to explore their other interests as well, of course, as time permits, because, this just sort of shows that you're an interesting person. It gives you more to talk about, and it helps you kind of stand out from the crowd, and it helps you just to sort of maintain your sanity when you're doing what you enjoy, when you use your free time to do what you enjoy. Very, very quickly, and this is covered much more in much more detail when you start applying to medical school, writing out your personal statement, your application entries, and your application materials, and when you start interviewing. But something else medical schools are looking at are these inter and intrapersonal competencies that I discussed. A few of them are listed on this slide. This is not something that I want you thinking about at this time, but it is something to kind of keep in mind as you're sort of pursuing your activities. What kind of skills, what kind of competencies should you be nurturing, should you be developing? So to kind of discuss our specific timelines here, the traditional timeline, that everyone thinks about was what we call a 4-year plan. You enter college as a pre-medical student and you graduate from college and you immediately go to medical school. In 2017, for the first time, the percentage of students who did this, quote, 4-year plan was actually the least amount. It was the lowest it's ever been in history, and only 37.5% of matriculants who were surveyed by the Association of American Medical Colleges had less than 1 year prior had they graduated from college. So as you can see, fewer and fewer students are actually sort of pursuing the 4-year plan. However, we work with students every year who are incredibly directed and very focused and, really know what they want from the second they, step foot on their college campus freshman year, and they're able to, to be able to apply to medical school at the end of the junior year and go straight from college to medical school. However, the vast majority of the students with whom we work with follow what we call a 5-year plan. And in that survey I referred to in 2017, 41.4% of medical school matriculants had 1 or 2 years passed since they graduated college. So, this is really becoming kind of the majority of the applicants are actually, taking a minimum of 1 to 2 gap years after college. So that's something to really kind of keep in mind. And like I said, always be flexible, always be adaptable. 21.2% of matriculants took 3 or more years after college to actually go to medical school. So many people realize after they graduate that they want to become physicians, or maybe something happens that kind of, causes you to deviate from your plan that you had when you initially got to college. So it's important, again, to remain flexible. So we are first going to discuss the 4-year plan, and some of these things I'm going to go over rather quickly because it's sort of, there's some themes that you will see that will follow in every single year that you need to do. So always, throughout your entire pre-medical experience, you want to pursue meaningful medically related activities. And I say meaningful because filler activities just don't cut it. If you're not really engaged and you're not really passionate about what you're doing, admissions committees can see through that. And something else I really want to emphasize, you never want to do something that is going to distract from your academic focus or that is going to take away from your academic success. So academics is number 1 throughout your entire pre-medical school experience. So doing as well as you can. Fall semester for the 4-year plan. Chemistry 1, biology 1, and then in the spring, Chem 2, Bio 2. So you get those kind of just done. Always meet with your pre-med advisor at least once a year. You want your pre-med advisor to be on your side. You want that person to be engaged in your success. You want them to be able to advocate for you when the time comes. In the summer, after your freshman year of college, do something meaningful. Research, some sort of meaningful clinical exposure, some sort of community service that is going to really be engaging. Something else to think about is to actually start prepping for the MCAT, believe it or not, this summer after your first year of college. And, by doing that, what I mean is review Bio 1, 2, Chem 1, 2, just get a basic book or some online resource that will allow you to sort of cover those, those key topics that will be on the MCAT. And this way you're kind of studying as you're going along. And then when you actually really sit down to study before you take the test, it's going to help to make that a bit easier for you. Okay, year 2 of our 4-year plan. Continue those activities, take on more activities, take on leadership roles, start to sort of think about those ideas. And so sort of continue those things. But again, you're going to be taking Orgo this year. So organic is tough, organic chemistry. So you don't want to be doing anything that's going to potentially take away from your academic success. So evaluate, what did you do freshman year? Is there anything you want to drop? Don't be afraid to walk away from activities if you're not learning from them, if they're not meaningful to you. So fall, Orgo 1, psychology, again, meet with your pre-med advisor. Building relationships with both your pre-med advisor, with principal investigators, with professors is vital throughout your entire pre-medical years. So that's really important. And then this summer, continue with your research, your clinical exposure, your community service, and again, consider, doing some MCAT prep, as I had discussed before. Year 3 of your 4-year plan, continue those activities, take stock of the activities that you were involved with. Are they meaningful? Can you drop anything? Is there anything new you can take on? Meet with your pre-med advisor. So for year 3, if you're applying as a quote, traditional applicant at the end of your 3rd year, your year 3 is a big one, okay? So in the fall, you want to take Physics 1, biochemistry. You also want to really start seriously studying for your MCAT, and you want to be learning about the 3 different application systems. AMCAS is the allopathic application service, AACOMAS is the osteopathic application service, and TMD-SAS is the Texas application service. There are different nuances with each of these 3 application systems. You can read about that in my book, The MedEdits Guide to Medical School Admissions, which outlines sort of the differences in those 3 different application systems. In the winter, okay, you want to start working on your personal statement. You want to start working on your application write-ups, all right? You will be submitting your application in early June, with everything else you have going on with your coursework, your MCAT prep, your activities, that's going to creep up on you really, really quickly. So you want to start working on those documents, ideally in the winter. I tell people to start working on them January, February, March, okay? In the spring, early spring, okay, you continue your MCAT prep, request your letters of reference. This is very, very important. You need at least 2 letters of reference from people in scientific disciplines. Ideally, you want more than that. If you've been doing any research, you definitely want a letter of reference from your principal investigator. Students who do the 4-year plan tend to have fewer letters than students who do a 5 or 6 or 7-year plan, right? Because you haven't met as many people, you haven't built as many relationships. That's okay. You just want all your letters of reference to be as strong as they can be. By May or June of year 3, this is your application year, you want to take the MCAT, okay? Ideally, especially for a 4-year plan applicant, you want to take the MCAT once. You want to do as well on your MCAT as you can possibly do. June, you submit your medical school applications. And then in the summer, not only are you working on secondary applications for medical schools, but again, you're pursuing that meaningful research, clinical exposure, community service, maybe public health, maybe global health, something that interests you. Your 4-year plan, year 4, is, again, going to be a really busy year. And keep in mind that even though you've already submitted your application, what you do during year 4 is really important, because you will be sending updates to your medical schools, and what you do during this 4th year of your 4-year plan could perhaps help you get off a wait list if you end up on a wait list. So you want to still be taking your academics very, very seriously, your activities very, very seriously. Ideally, you want to be taking some upper level science courses, and maybe getting some additional letters of reference that you're sending to medical schools. Maybe you're sending those letters in once you're on a wait list that you want to get off of. In the fall, hopefully you're starting your medical school interviews, okay? Spring, don't give up. Keep going. Keep taking your courses. Keep being involved in your activities, because if you end up on a wait list, that wait list potentially isn't moving, believe it or not, till May, June, July. So you want as much evidence that a medical school to which you are waitlisted, that they should take you, okay? Also, have some fun, okay? The 4-year plan is not an easy plan. You're going to be super duper busy. So take some time off during the summer and just, have a good time. And then in August, you start medical school. So there you go. It's all done for you. So now let's go through the 5-year plan. And again, this seems to be the most popular kind of timeline that our students are following these days. again, repeating this, pursue meaningful medically related activities that won't just distract from your academic success. Doing well in your MCAT, that's your top priority, but you do still need to kind of get what we consider those prerequisites of research, clinical exposure, and community service in. Okay, so in the fall, in the spring, it kind of still follows our 4-year plan. Take chem, take bio, get those done with your first year, meet with your pre-med advisor, do something meaningful in the summertime. Year 2 of our 5-year plan, and this is where you kind of get a little bit more time. You don't need to start really thinking seriously about the MCAT just yet. Continue those activities. Evaluate, were your freshman year activities, meaningful to you? Is there anything you should be dropping? Don't take away from your academic focus. You want to do as well in organic as you can do. It's a tough class. It's a weeder class. If you can this year, take psychology and sociology. Those courses are a little bit lighter and they will be on the MCAT, and meet with your pre-med advisor, right? Build those relationships. In the summer, again, do something meaningful, research, clinical exposure, community service, teaching, leadership, and consider starting a light MCAT prep, okay, depending on when you plan on taking the MCAT, because that becomes, you have a little bit more flexibility, with a 5-year plan regarding when you're going to take the MCAT. So year 3, same thing, you want to continue being involved in your activities. You want to take physics, biochemistry, and you can take your MCAT at this point at any time once you've finished these prerequisites. So you can take your MCAT in the summer. You can take it in the spring. You can take it in the fall of your year 4. So this is the year 3, when you really want to start prepping for the MCAT, and you want to be thinking about when you're going to be best prepared to take the MCAT. Ideally, you want to take the MCAT once and not twice. But the 5-year plan does allow the luxury of taking the MCAT a second time and not submitting a late application. So that is something that, depending on your individual path and your individual timeline, that's something that you can fit in if it becomes necessary. So the year 4 of the 5-year plan, kind of becomes the busiest year for these students. Again, in the fall or spring, meet with your pre-med advisor, pursue those activities, evaluate which activities you want to get rid of. In the fall, start taking some upper level science classes, right? The 5-year plan students rather are very fortunate because they end up with 4 years of solid academics on their application. And typically most students, who aren't straight A students from the beginning will have an upward trend. So by year 4, they're getting better grades than they did year 1. And that's something that we see a lot of, with regards to trends, and an upward trend is always looked upon favorably. Start exploring the different application systems. AMCAS, which is the allopathic application system, AACOMAS, which is the osteopathic application system, TMDSAS, which is the Texas application system. And all of those application systems you can read about in my book, The MedEdits Guide to Medical School Admissions. Start requesting letters of reference, okay? Thinking about who's going to write your letters of reference. Again, a minimum of 2 science professors, a principal investigator. At this point, you can probably get a solid 5-6 letters. And that's great. The more evidence you have to support what an excellent candidate you're going to be, the better. You also want to start really thinking about what you're going to be doing during your gap year. So I advise students to start really thinking about that in the winter, and kind of really solidifying what they're going to do for the gap year in the spring. And then at the end of this year, you start, you're going to be submitting an application in June. You want to be taking your MCAT by May or June. So you want to start working on your personal statement and your application entries in the winter of year 4. Okay. Now, year 5 of the MedEdits 5-year plan, you get to have an entire gap year experience. And, we find that students who have these gap year experiences actually do better on interviews. They're more mature. They've had more time to develop professionally. They're more confident. And, students who have taken gap years or not, they're all put in the same, cohort. So most medical schools, that we know of do not sort of decide who they're going to take based on how much time they've had off or not. So we find that students who've had a little bit more time to mature, to grow, to think about what's important to them, and to sort of become more interesting people actually do better on interviews. So this is something else to think about when deciding how long you're going to take to prepare yourself as a pre-medical student. During this year, you're going to be interviewing for medical school. Also have some fun, right? You've worked really hard. You're ideally going to be starting medical school in August of year 5. So, you sneak in some vacation time, do something fun that you really enjoy. And keep in mind that what you do during this year, it's not a year off, right? It's not a year just to sort of have fun completely, because what you do during this year is going to potentially improve your candidacy, and maybe you'll be getting additional letters of reference. So, keep in mind that this is a candidacy enhancement year as well. So what are the what I call the 8 rules for any pre-med plan? Number 1, meet with your pre-med advisor regularly. This person's going to advocate for you. You want them to sort of, to be on your side and to really help you succeed. Keep in mind, academics comes first. Never do anything that might compromise your grades, your academic success, your MCAT performance. Keep a journal, okay? Write about your experiences, write about your observations, your insights, because this is going to help you to then create and compose meaningful documents when it comes time for you to write your application. Always nurture relationships with professors, principal investigators, anybody you meet, right? Not only will you learn more by sort of nurturing those relationships and being more involved in those activities, but this will also, kind of put you in a better position to ask for strong letters of reference. Explore, pursue things that interest you. The more passionate and engaged you are in an activity, the more meaningful it's going to be for you, the better the applicant you're going to be. And we really encourage applicants to stay away from filler activities, something that just sort of shows I have teaching experience, right? Admissions committees can read through that. Don't be discouraged, right? You may get a bad grade. Maybe you don't do as well on the first MCAT as you expected you were going to do. Sometimes people will sort of overestimate their preparedness, right? So we work with applicants who, have flaws in their candidacies, and we work with them. We figure out, well, how can we make up for this flaw? And what do we need to do to sort of prove that you can do it? And that was just sort of, a sidestep for you. And just so you don't burn out, develop other interests, do other things that you enjoy. Don't just do things to sort of help you become a great medical school applicant. And this is sort of a rule to follow throughout life, right? You don't want to become burned out, and stay positive. There will be times where you just think like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. I have so much ahead of me. How am I going to get through all of this? But you do. And that's why really kind of creating a timeline, creating a plan is really important, because it helps you to kind of keep that positivity. Just a little plug about MedEdits. Who are we? I founded MedEdits, and on my own, I was the only one doing any of the advising, along with my one chief editor, and slowly we grew. I have very carefully selected all of my faculty. We require that all of our faculty have a minimum of 5 years of admissions experience at the faculty level. We do not hire medical students. We do not hire recent graduates. We do not hire physicians who've been in practice for 20 years and were on, an admissions committee, 20 years ago for 6 months. So we really have incredibly high standards for all of our faculty. We offer pre-med consulting. We offer advising. We will help you to enhance your candidacy if necessary. We'll also review all your documents and edit them and help you prep for interviews. And stay in touch with us and follow our website, www.mededits.com, because we are always offering, new things and trying to develop things. And always feel free to get in touch with us. info@mededits.com is our email address. And go on Amazon and buy my book, The MedEdits Guide to Medical School Admissions. It's a straightforward, easy to read guide that will really answer everything that you need to know about this process. So thank you so much for listening, and good luck.